Welcome to another edition of Bases and Balls with Guardians broadcaster Jim Rosenhaus, brought to you by the Old 97 Cafe. And Rosie, a lot to talk about this week. We'll talk about some of the pitching and stuff, but wanted to get your evaluation right now of the catching position for us. You know, last year, the two catchers we had are gone. Zunino came in, still maybe recovering from the injury. I don't know. This is you day in, day out, but talk about Gallagher, Zunino, and the catching position so far for us almost 2 months into the season now.
You know what, Ray, looking at it, I think you're right. I think Mike Zunino still is in some cases recovering. And also just he only played about 30 games a year ago, and all of those were before the month of May was concluded. So I really think, that time missed maybe impacting him now. And he's, he's been getting actually better defensively as the season's gone along. And I think that's part of just getting further away from a pretty significant surgery. But obviously, look, he's struggling at the plate. So is Gallagher. They're just in a miserable stretch, both of them. And I think what you just have to look at for both is track record. Mike Zunino has always been a power guy, and you just hope he can get that going again and maybe cut the strikeouts a little bit, because it's a battle right now. Both of them in the month of May just struggling terribly, and they're working to get through it, but not much is coming together for either one.
And Rosie, a lot of people looking at the ability or inability to throw out runners, but I was looking at statistics across the board. And really, catchers across the board this year are having a tough time. And I think a lot of that has to do that you have 6 extra inches to work with when you're stealing bases this year.
Well, I think there's that. And Ray, the amount of stolen bases that are coming where you look up and before the pitch is even to home plate, the runner's halfway to second. The jumps are enormous. And it's not, the pitchers only have the 2 pickoff moves that they can use in each plate appearance. And it's not as if they're using those and then these stolen bases are happening, but maybe they're more reluctant to go over there. Maybe they haven't figured out with the pitch clock and all of that, how to mix in controlling the running game. But you're right. Like looking around the league, used to be 35% was a pretty good percentage. If you had a catcher throwing out 35%, you were really happy with that. You'd be hard pressed to find anybody even close to that. I did look Martin Maldonado, who has a really good reputation, the Houston catcher. He's at 27%, which is low for him. But most of the catchers are below 20%, and a lot of them are, in the single digits percentage wise throwing out runners. So it's not easy right now for catchers, and I know a lot of pitchers take responsibility for that too. But the base stealers love it.
They do. Bases and Balls, Guardians broadcaster Jim Rosenhaus with us, WAKR. Rosie, lack of pop in this lineup has been evident so far, and you see these guys in spring training. So I wanted to ask you, are there some guys, AA, AAA, that generate some pop maybe that we don't know of or we're waiting to get healthy? Because I don't foresee maybe the Guardians making a trade to get a little extra pop in right field or whatever. But are there some guys that could get a look in the near future?
But I mean, I think, you had one up here and he's been sent down to the minor leagues, and Oscar Gonzalez. He's hit a little bit better at Columbus. Obviously, there's a difference in the pitching that he's seeing, but he would be the big name. Another name with a lot of power that you hear about is John Kenzie Noel, but he seems a ways away. He's very young for the AAA level. And George Valera is back and playing after an injury in spring training. Not a huge power threat, but certainly someone who can hit the ball out of the ballpark and provide some good offensive numbers. But they got to make sure that he's healthy first and then develops at the AAA level, which, he still needs a lot of that. So it's got to come from within. I think we've seen in the series in Chicago, missing Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor, those are huge absences from your lineup, especially from a power standpoint.
Jim Rosenhaus with us, Bases and Balls. And Rosie, almost 2 months into the season now, And we're in second place on our division and going with two starting pitchers that we had in our starting five a year ago, and the influx and injuries in the lineup and such. So I still think when everything goes the way that we can win this division. So with that being said, you've seen almost all these teams now in the American League. What's your assessment of the American League on the power teams and how you see this league and our division right now, almost 2 months in?
Well, we haven't seen Tampa Bay, but those teams that have, I think would say that's the best team in the American League right now. The AL East is very top heavy. You look at the Yankees; they're near the bottom of the division, and that's a tough ball club. I was impressed with the Angels, even though the Guardians took 2 out of 3 last weekend. I like their lineup, and do they have the staying power to win the West? We'll see, but they're a handful, especially with their lineup. So, the teams that we've seen in other divisions, those would be some that come readily to mind. We haven't seen Baltimore yet, too. That's another team. Tampa Bay and Baltimore, they've been a handful for the AL East. In terms of the division, we haven't seen Kansas City yet, but they're struggling, obviously. I think the Twins are still the team to beat at this point in time, the first place team. And, until someone can chase them down, they will be. But, the White Sox looked awfully good the first 2 nights in Chicago. And I know they're way under 500 because of the start that they had, but they're getting a lot of their injured players back. And they're playing with a little more confidence and having a much better May than they did in April. You may yet hear from them before it's all said and done, and they could be a real team to contend with down the stretch.
There you go. Another edition of Bases and Balls. Guardians broadcaster Jim Rosenhaus taking time from his week to join us on WAKR, brought to you by the Old 97 Cafe. Rosie, as always, my friend, appreciate the time. We'll look forward to the calls this weekend. You're in the Big Apple as the Guardians taking on the New York Mets. Looking forward to the call tonight, my friend. We'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good, Ray. Thanks.